Okay, let's unpack this core human riddle. We've all been there,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
That moment, maybe you're a teenager, or maybe it hits you later in life, and all those rules that were drilled into you, be kind, don't lie, treat others how you want to be treated, they start to sound less like laws and more like, well, like suggestions.
Suggestions you can ignore. That's what we call the quiet rebel question.
Yeah,
And it's absolutely key to philosophical thinking.
yeah.
It starts with something small, maybe thinking about cheating on a test, but it grows into this really profound challenge. The real question hits you when you realize, wait a minute, if I can actually get away with lying or cheating or just being selfish, and it helps me.
Why shouldn't I? Where's the compelling reason not to?
Exactly. Where is the necessary reason?
It stops being about, childish rebellion and it becomes this almost intellectual search for a loophole. We're always trying to be efficient, right? Maximize our gains, minimize the risk. So if the whole foundation for doing the right thing is just a social contract I can secretly opt out of without getting caught, I mean, the rational choice seems to be opt out and win.
And that is precisely our mission in this deep dive. We are not here to give you a moral lecture. We're not here to tell you what's right.
No.
We are digging into the source material that analyzes the very bedrock of moral motivation. We're trying to find an answer that's strong enough to stand up to the most cynical person in the room. We need to find the why.
We're looking for that one reason to be moral that still makes sense when you are absolutely 100% sure no one is watching.
Right.
Not your boss, not your family, not even the all-seeing eye of social media. This is the ultimate test. Morality in total privacy.
So we're going to structure this clearly. We'll start with the external stuff, the pressures of fear and self-interest.
Okay.
Then we'll move to the big foundational questions, contrasting, say, a transcendent answer like divine command with the purely internal one, like rational consistency.
And after that.
And finally, we'll go even deeper and look at how morality actually shapes who you are, your personal identity, and how it co-creates the very world we live in.
So buckle up. We're diving deep into maybe the most fundamental question there is. Why should I be moral at all? Let's start on the ground floor then, where most of our moral thinking begins, really, with external consequences. I mean, the first, most immediate answer we ever get is basically, you should be moral because if you're not, you'll be punished.
This is the most practical, direct motivator, isn't it?
Yeah.
In this kind of framework, morality is, well, it's defined by outside pressure. And the source material breaks down three major systems of consequence that keep us in line.
The first one is the most obvious, the legal system.
Right.
Jail, fines, losing your freedom. This works because the consequence is written down, it's tangible, and it could be immediate. The threat of legal action is probably the main thing keeping large societies from just falling apart.
But maybe even more powerful, at least in our day-to-day lives, is the second type, social punishment.
Oh, yeah, this is the fear of being rejected, the sting of shame, being ostracized, losing your reputation.
Exactly. Think about something like cancel culture or even just, neighborhood gossip. The threat of becoming an outcast is often way more immediate and painful than a parking ticket.
And for billions of people throughout history, the third one, the religious framework, is probably the biggest deterrent of all.
Because it extends the consequences beyond this one lifetime. You've got divine judgment, hell, or this relentless balancing act of karma.
So in that view, morality is just a system of cosmic rewards and punishments. It's designed to control your behavior on a cosmic scale.
And if we're being practical, this combination, legal, social, and religious deterrence, it's very effective.
It works.
It works. If you build a society where the external costs of being immoral are consistently higher than the rewards, most people will toe the line. It keeps society running.
Here's the huge philosophical crack in that foundation, the thing we're calling the problem of the loophole. If the only reason I don't do something cruel is because I'm afraid of jail or I'm afraid of hell, the second I am certain, truly certain, that no punishment is coming,
The reason to be moral just evaporates.
it's gone.
The ethical leash comes off as soon as the risk disappears. I mean, picture this. You're alone in a field. You find a wallet that has $1,000 in cash, no ID, no cameras, no witnesses, no way for anyone to ever know you found it.
Right.
If your only motivation is fear, you have zero reason to try and return that wallet.
And that brings up a much deeper, more difficult question, which is just restraining yourself out of fear the same thing as true morality? If you're just being careful to avoid getting in trouble, is that a moral act?
And our sources argue pretty compellingly that no, it's not. If your actions are just a risk assessment, a calculation to avoid loss, that's prudence. It's not morality.
That's a great distinction.
Morality implies you have some kind of internal recognition that the act itself, the harm or the injustice, is wrong. It's wrong regardless of the personal cost to you. Someone acting from a place of true morality returns that wallet because keeping it is wrong, whether they get caught or not.
Okay, so fear is out. I mean, it's a useful tool for society, but it's not the foundation.
Right. It supports morality, but it doesn't ground it.
So let's move up a level to the slightly more sophisticated cousin of fear, self-interest. The idea that you should be moral because, in the long run, it's just better for you.
This reframes morality as a kind of long-term strategic investment. It's a pragmatic calculation to maximize your own benefit. You know, the old saying, honesty is the best
I
policy.
mean, you can see the benefits, right? They're measurable.
Oh, absolutely. When you're consistently honest and trustworthy, you build up social capital. People trust you with their business, with their secrets.
Which leads to deeper relationships, better cooperation, things that create way more value than one little act of cheating ever could. You get access to things, to networks, that people who are seen as shady they don't.
And there's the flip side, too. The internal cost of being immoral.
The guilt.
The guilt, the shame.
Yeah.
The constant inner conflict. The sources point out how painful and exhausting that is. Integrity, where your actions line up with your values. It just feels better than living in constant fear of being found out or trying to manage a web of lies.
We see this play out all the time. A world where everyone is lying and cheating is just miserable for everyone. And people who consistently hurt others often end up hurting themselves through isolation or just paranoia.
Right. So in that sense, yeah, moral behavior is generally good for your mental and emotional well-being.
Right.
This position, sometimes it's called ethical egoism. It sounds pretty solid.
It sounds solid. It gives you a rational reason to be good even when no one's looking over your shoulder.
Oh, good.
But it slams into two huge philosophical walls.
It does.
And the first one is what our sources call the successful villain problem.
Ah, yes.
This is that uncomfortable real-world fact that sometimes people profit a lot from being deeply immoral.
Right. Think of the powerful, unrepentant dictator who steals billions from his country, or the clever CEO who commits massive fraud, covers his tracks, and then retires to a private island with no consequences.
They got power, they got wealth, they got pleasure, and they never faced any punishment. They were just really, really good at being immoral.
So if your entire argument for morality is that crime doesn't pay, and then you see someone for whom crime paid spectacularly well,
and they never get caught,
the whole self-interest argument just falls apart. The rational incentive to be moral disappears for anyone who thinks, hey, I can pull that off too.
And the challenge isn't just a theory, it's psychological. If you're watching someone else successfully cheat the system, and you're being told to make a sacrifice for morality, the self-interest argument doesn't have a good answer for you. Except maybe, well, you might get caught.
Which just takes us right back to the fear problem.
Exactly. And the second big critique of self-interest is the existence of moral martyrs and heroes.
The acts we admire the most.
Right. Someone risking or even losing their life to save a stranger. Or someone who stands up for a principle knowing it will destroy their career or their social standing.
These actions are fundamentally, profoundly not in their self-interest. They involve taking on catastrophic personal costs for someone else or for an ideal.
If morality was just about being prudent, these heroic acts would seem irrational or like an emotional miscalculation.
You'd praise the person who runs away from the burning building to save themselves, not the one who runs in.
Yeah. The fact that we hold up the self-sacrificing hero as the gold standard of morality, it suggests that what morality demands, what goodness really is something much bigger than just self-preservation or long-term gain. It seems to demand a willingness to put something else first.
So after looking at these external pressures, we can see they're powerful supports, but they're not the foundation. They can explain cautious behavior, but they can't explain unconditional morality. We have to go deeper.
Okay, so we've established that external pressures, fear, personal gain, they're not enough on their own. They might prop morality up, but they don't ground it.
Correct.
So let's turn to the really foundational arguments, starting with the big one, the one that's dominated human history for millennia: morality and God.
For so many traditions, this is the ultimate answer. It's clear. It's absolute. You should be moral because God commands it, and you are ultimately accountable to God.
So this moves the source of morality completely outside of, human opinion or what society thinks this week.
Exactly. It's grounded in a divine will, in sacred law. And being moral becomes an act of obedience, of worship, of aligning yourself with something transcendent. The moral law is permanent, it's revealed, it's universal for everyone under that authority.
And the strength of this view is huge. I mean, it gives morality a truly transcendent foundation. It's not arbitrary.
Right. It doesn't change just because society becomes corrupt or selfish.
Well,
Your duties hold firm even if the whole world goes crazy because you owe that duty to a higher power, not to local customs.
and crucially, it gives a perfect answer to that successful villain problem we were just talking about.
Hmm.
Divine command introduces the idea of ultimate justice. So if being immoral seems to pay off in this life, well, divine justice promises that everyone is held accountable in the end.
It creates a moral system where there are no loopholes because the observer sees everything and the consequences are eternal. No human legal system can match that for motivational power.
This view faces a couple of major philosophical challenges, and this is regardless of anyone's personal faith.
Right. The source material highlights these classic problems.
First, there's the issue of conflicting claims. Which got God? And therefore, which set of commands?
Exactly. Different religions have different moral rules about everything from diet and sexuality to warfare and social structures.
Hmm.
If morality is defined only by divine command, then in a world with many faiths, which set of commands is the universal one?
It can lead to fracturing the moral conversation instead of uniting it.
It often does.
Yeah.
And then there's a more subtle psychological challenge about our motivation, one that kind of mirrors the fear problem.
Okay.
Are we doing a good deed because the action itself, the compassion, the justice, is inherently good? Or are we doing it just because we want the reward, like heaven? Or we're afraid of the punishment, like hell?
So if my motivation for being kind is purely to earn a spot in paradise, is that actually true kindness?
Is it an instrumental act? Or are you just using it to get a personal outcome rather than it being an intrinsically moral choice? This suggests that maybe it's the underlying goodness of the act that's motivating us, and the divine command is just reinforcing that with the highest possible stakes.
And this leads us directly to the huge philosophical dilemma here, the one that's been debated for centuries. It's called the Euthyphro problem.
Ah, yes. From Plato's dialogue, it's the central challenge to this whole idea.
We have to dig into this one. It's crucial.
The Euthyphro problem asks a really simple but powerful question. Is an action morally good because God commands it? Or does God command it because it is already good?
Let's follow that first option. Is something is good only because God commands it?
Then goodness is completely arbitrary. God could, in theory, command us to be cruel tomorrow, and by that definition, cruelty would instantly become good.
That makes morality seem unstable. It goes against our gut feeling that goodness has some kind of permanent quality to it, something that exists before anyone declares it.
It would mean that goodness is just another word for power. The definition of good is simply whatever the supreme power says it is. And if that's true, we couldn't really praise God's goodness. We could only praise God's power. We couldn't say God is good. We could only say God is powerful.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge implication. So what about the second option? God commands it because it is already good.
Well, if we go with that one, it means goodness has to have an independent standard, a foundation that exists either before or alongside God's will.
So even for a devout believer, the standard for morality isn't just the command itself. It's some underlying objective goodness that even the divine recognizes and follows.
Which means, whether you believe in God or not, the philosophical quest is the same. Can we identify that independent standard of goodness, the one that pulls us toward doing the right thing for its own sake, beyond fear or reward?
And this is the perfect pivot to the other foundational argument, morality as rational consistency.
Exactly. This family of answers argues that you should be moral because it's what any rational person would want if they looked at things from everyone's point of view. It grounds morality not in faith, but in universal logic and, well, in rejecting hypocrisy.
The simplest version of this is, of course, the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. It's an immediate, gut-level test.
The power of the golden rule is that it forces you to be consistent. When you flip the roles in your head and imagine being on the receiving end of your own action, being lied to, being stolen from, the injustice of it becomes instantly clear. You rationally want to live in a world where you're treated with respect, so reason demands you apply that same rule to others.
But the rational argument goes a lot deeper, especially with the philosopher Immanuel Kant. He introduced this idea of the categorical imperative.
Which is often simplified down to the test of universalization.
Right.
The core idea is you should only act on a principle that you could rationally want to become a universal law for everyone.
So let's take the source's example. Lying for convenience. I tell myself it's okay for me to lie right now to get what I want. So the principle or the maxim I'm testing is anyone can lie whenever it serves their immediate personal advantage.
Okay, now you have to ask, could I rationally want a world where everyone lives by that rule?
No way. If everyone lies whenever they want, trust just collapses. Communication becomes meaningless.
And if there's no expectation of truth, then the act of lying itself becomes pointless because no one would believe you anyway. Your lie only works because it's exploiting a system of trust.
Well, the principle of your lie would destroy that very system if everyone did it.
So the act of lying is a fundamental contradiction. You're trying to make an exception for yourself while relying on a system that your exception would annihilate. It's irrational. And for Kant, morality comes directly from the integrity of reason, from avoiding that kind of contradiction and hypocrisy.
That is an incredibly strong argument. It doesn't depend on your feelings or on God or on punishment. It just depends on the pure logic of the action itself.
If the principle behind your action can't logically work as a universal law, then it is morally wrong, period.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. What about a small white lie? The kind that genuinely avoids a huge fight or prevents someone's feelings from being hurt? Does Kant really demand we be brutally honest even if it causes social chaos?
That is the classic real-world problem that makes Kantian ethics so difficult.
Yeah.
A strict rationalist would say, yes, the principle of truth has to be upheld because making exceptions just starts you down a slippery slope. But even within Kant's framework, you could argue it's about framing the maxim correctly. I will lie to save an innocent person's life is a very different maxim than I will lie to avoid feeling awkward.
And if you test that maxim, I will lie to save an innocent life, could you universalize that? If everyone lied to save lives, it seems like the system of trust would probably survive because the motivation isn't selfish. It's a higher moral duty.
Right. It shows the complexity, but the core engine is still that rational test.
And this idea of fairness and consistency connects to more modern philosophy, too, like the veil of ignorance from John Rawls.
Another really powerful thought experiment to get us to rational impartiality.
The idea is, imagine you're designing the basic rules for society, but you're behind this veil of ignorance. You have no idea who you're going to be.
You don't know your race, your gender, your wealth, your talents. Nothing. You might be born rich, or you might end up as the weakest, poorest, least capable person in that society.
So because you might end up at the very bottom, you would rationally choose rules that protect everyone, especially the most vulnerable. You'd make sure there was a basic standard of justice and well-being.
You wouldn't design a society where the rich can exploit the poor because you might be one of the poor.
Yeah.
You wouldn't create a healthcare system that abandons the sick because you might be born sick.
It forces you to be impartial. The rules you choose are based on a kind of rational self-interest in a hypothetical worst-case scenario. It makes you respect others as equals because, literally, they could be you.
And that's the core rational motivation, whether it's Kant or Rawls. If I claim that my own life, my own dignity, and my own suffering matter, then consistency demands that I recognize that others' suffering matters too. Unless there's some relevant difference between us, and in terms of basic humanity there isn't one, then being cruel or exploitative is just irrational hypocrisy.
So in this view, morality isn't about God or fear. It's about acknowledging that other people are rational beings whose lives have the same value as your own. It's a necessary part of living a rational life in a community of equals. Okay, we've built a really strong case for morality using logic and reason. But we started this whole thing by acknowledging that sometimes that successful villain or just a cynical person says, I don't care about being rationally consistent.
Right. I understand your logic and I reject it.
So where do we go if pure logic isn't enough?
This is where we have to make the pivot inward. If the answers aren't just external, like fear, and they're not just transcendent like God or purely logical like Kant, then the only place left to look is inside the person themselves.
We shift the question.
Exactly. We shift from what should I do to what kind of person should I be?
Yeah.
And this is the world of morality and identity, or what's known as virtue ethics.
And this view totally changes the focus. It's not about the outcome of the action anymore. It's about the internal consequence of the action.
The sources argue that every choice we make, it changes the world inside of us. It forges our character.
So this goes way back to Aristotle.
All the way back. Virtue ethics is less about finding universal laws and more about achieving the ultimate purpose, or telos, of a human being. The argument is that moral behavior leads to eudaimonia.
Which is often translated as human flourishing or a good life.
Exactly, a state of well-being that's the only truly self-sufficient good. And you get there by cultivating virtues. Aristotle saw virtues as the golden mean, the sweet spot between two extremes or vices. So courage is the mean between recklessness and cowardice.
So how does this bring us back to our main question? How does this motivate someone when no one is watching?
The answer is really profound. Lying isn't just an external act, it's an internal training session.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Every time you lie, or act selfishly, or ignore suffering, you're literally conditioning your own character. You're training yourself to be less trustworthy, less sensitive, less reliable.
You're wearing down your own capacity to be good.
Yes. Think of your character like a muscle. If you repeatedly choose the lazy, dishonest, or cruel path, you are letting the muscles of compassion and integrity atrophy. And that leads to what we call inner dissonance.
That feeling that what you're doing is just.
That-
It's not you, or not the you want to be.
Right. And that feeling is intensely painful. That's the price the successful villain pays. They have to live with their own fractured soul. You become fragmented. The person you show to the world and the person you are in private just move further and further apart. And that internal conflict can be more destructive than any fine or prison sentence.
And the opposite is true as well.
Conversely, when you consciously practice being honest or courageous or kind, you are building stable virtues. These choices aren't just one-off events. They are reps in the gym of the soul.
And the reward isn't external. It's integrity, self-respect, becoming someone you can actually live with.
The question fundamentally shifts from, what do I get out of this, to what kind of person am I making myself into by doing this? The reason to be moral is tied directly to building a self that has coherence and integrity.
So think about two people. Person A doesn't steal because they're afraid of going to jail. That's external fear.
Right.
Person B doesn't steal because the act of stealing itself, regardless of the consequences, would make them a thief. It would change their identity into someone they don't respect.
And only person B has an unconditional reason to be moral when no one is watching.
Because that internal consequence is the one you can't escape. You can dodge the law, you can hide from your neighbors, you can even rationalize God away, but you cannot escape the person you are becoming with every choice you make.
The only person you are guaranteed to spend every second of the rest of your life with is you. If your actions are constantly violating your own values, you create a self that you can't respect. The moral life is simply the coherent life.
Okay, so building on that internal sense of self, let's zoom out even further. Let's look at the idea of morality and meaning with the question, what kind of world do we want to live in?
This expands the scope from just your individual character to the collective environment we all share.
So this view sees you not just as someone who follows moral rules, but as an active, a co-creator of the moral reality that you live in.
Yes. Every decision, even the small, unseen ones, subtly contributes to our shared social and moral ecology.
It's like morality creates public goods. Trust is a public good. Safety is a public good. When you choose to be moral, to keep your promises, to be fair, you're investing in the public trust that benefits everyone, yourself included.
And if everyone, just out of pure self-interest, decides, I'm going to cheat whenever I can get away with it, and I'll only help someone if it helps me.
The result isn't just a slightly more annoying world.
No, the result is deep societal decay. It becomes a world of constant distrust, of chronic paranoia, of purely transactional, shallow relationships. Our shared ability to have deep connections and do meaningful things together is just lost because the moral foundation is gone.
The sources make a really important point here about meaning. Humans are storytellers. We look for meaning not just in our own personal success, but in how our lives connect to something bigger. And when you choose to keep a promise when no one's watching, or you choose to protect someone vulnerable, you're contributing more than just one good deed.
You're contributing to the narrative of humanity itself. You're building a shared reality where trust and cooperation are actually possible. This is the existential reason you should be moral, because you are a co-creator of the moral environment.
Your moral choice is like a vote for the kind of world you want to live in.
Exactly. So even if your good action isn't rewarded right away, it shapes the collective reality in a way that is more humane, more just, and ultimately more meaningful for everybody.
So even if I make that heroic sacrifice that self-interest completely rejects, I'm still maximizing something. I'm maximizing the meaning and the quality of the human experience.
For yourself, in terms of your identity, and for your community, in terms of the shared world you're building, it connects the rational argument, we all rationally want a trusting world, with the identity layer and this collective meaning layer.
We have built a really robust stack of reasons here, from rational consistency to the very construction of the self. We found unconditional reasons for morality based on internal logic and self-respect.
But philosophy has to go all the way. It has to confront that absolute limit we started with, the dark answer.
Right. What if someone just says, I understand all your logic, but I simply don't care about other people or fairness. I'll be immoral if it benefits me, and I'll take the risk.
This is the moment where philosophy hits a wall. It's confronting the nihilist or the sociopath who understands the logic, the social cost, the identity cost, but just rejects the goal, rejects coherence or self-respect or community.
If that person says, I get your universalization idea, but I feel zero obligation to follow it because I just don't value other people's well-being, pure logic can't force them to act morally.
You can't force a value system on someone who refuses to value it.
No. We can restrain them. We can use the law and social norms, those external pressures we started with. We can argue with them. We can appeal to whatever empathy they might have left.
Or try to scare them with consequences. But you cannot compel morality with rational deduction alone, because morality requires an initial choice, an initial premise,
Yeah.
that you value others and that you value your own integrity.
And this reveals something really critical about what morality even is.
Yes, the source material really emphasizes this. Morality isn't just about knowing what's right. That's the rational part.
Uh-huh.
It is also fundamentally about caring.
And caring, unlike logic, isn't necessarily universal. It's shaped by your upbringing, your community, your choices, maybe even by just dumb luck, having an experience that opens your eyes and lets you really feel someone else's suffering.
So if the logical and self-respect arguments fail, the only options left are either physical restraint, like the law, or the hope that you can somehow spark empathy or conscience. It shows that true moral action needs a synthesis of both reason, the knowledge of what's right, and emotion, the desire to do what's right.
Which brings us, finally, to the synthesis. We asked, why should I be moral at all? And we found that there's no single bumper sticker answer.
No. It's a robust, interlocking stack of motivations that work on different levels. It's like layers of defense against that cynical loophole.
So let's review the comprehensive answer we've built layer by layer to show how all these different philosophies can work together.
Let's do it.
First, there's the prudential answer. You should be moral because, on the whole, it supports your long-term well-being, your relationships, and your inner peace. It's the best strategy to avoid guilt and paranoia. It's the practical layer.
Second, the social answer. Your actions are never in a vacuum. They actively shape the quality of the world we all share. Choosing to be moral is a contribution to a community where trust and justice can exist, which makes your life and everyone else's life better.
Third, the rational answer. This is maybe the hardest one to argue against logically. If you claim your own dignity and suffering matter, then consistency demands you recognize the dignity and suffering of others. To deny that is just intellectual hypocrisy. It's a failure of reason.
Fourth, the existential and identity answer. This is the heart of virtue ethics. Your choices are constantly defining who you are becoming. Being moral is essential to building a coherent, integrated self that you can respect and live with, no matter what anyone else thinks.
And finally, for believers, there's the spiritual answer. Morality is aligning yourself with the divine or with ultimate reality. And it comes with an accountability that goes beyond this life, providing ultimate meaning and consequence.
And none of these layers suggest that being moral is easy or that it's free.
Not at all.
A lot of the time, being moral will absolutely cost you. It will cost you time or money or comfort. That's why this question is so hard in the first place.
But when you take them all together, they show that morality isn't just some random set of rules forced on us from the outside. It is deeply woven into reason, into personal identity, into how communities function, and into the very search for a meaningful life.
It's the highest expression of what it means to be a rational, self-aware social creature dedicated to human flourishing, to eudaimonia.
So this deep dive started with that quiet, rebellious childhood question, why bother being moral? And I think we've moved far, far beyond the simple answer of just being afraid of getting caught.
We've definitely established that the external fear-based answers can only explain careful behavior, not real moral conviction. The real grounding for morality is in rational consistency, in avoiding hypocrisy, and in that profound, ongoing process of creating yourself through your virtues.
The sources have really lit up this idea that choosing morality is choosing the foundation of your own character, and it's actively choosing the kind of world you want to live in. It's the ultimate act of making meaning.
And in the end, the logical structure of the universe and the psychological structure of a healthy self, they both seem to punish that path of total, cynical self-interest. They punish it with incoherence and isolation. The moral life is the only rational, sustainable path to true flourishing.
So in the deepest sense, asking, why should I be moral, isn't really a question about external rules or what you get in the future. It's the exact same question as asking, what kind of life do I want to live? And what kind of human do I want to be, the person I am shaping myself into, even when the door is closed and absolutely no one else is watching? That choice, as we now know, defines everything.